Welcome to Raising the Bar, a podcast giving no bullshit marketing advice for Aussie business owners. Expertise takes experience, and that's why we tell stories from lived experience to deliver marketing that raises the standard of what Aussie business owners should expect.
We are back with another episode of Raising the Bar, and today we are talking about WordPress. Yep. So is WordPress dead? I guess this kind of comes from, we've got some clients that are currently doing an AI masterclass, and the presenter maybe hinted at the fact that if their marketing company or agency is still building in WordPress, they may need a new one. So
it's caused me many conversations over the last 2 weeks. So we thought, why not just record a podcast on this one?
Yep. So what's your honest take on it?
Yeah, I think when you hear a big statement, I think we all wish in many cases WordPress was dead, because often websites are built on it that I think people are like, oh, it must just be easier straight away. But there's a reason WordPress is who it is. And I think I'm just going to start with the stats, and it will probably tell the story that no, WordPress isn't dead. Is it dying? There's always a chance that, AI will move so quickly that it could be. But right now, WordPress makes up about 43% of all global websites. Now, interestingly, WordPress was also dead, apparently, and I'm old enough to remember, in 2017. So just under a decade ago. And back then it made up 23.1% of global websites. So it's actually nearly doubled in a decade. So that to me would indicate something is not in fact dying.
That's probably growth.
That would be great growth. Wouldn't mind if that was my business. So yeah, WordPress is still about. The concerns, I think, and the questions that you want to ask is, what do you actually need your website to do? There are cases where a WordPress website might not be the right thing, but ultimately, of all the CMS websites in the world, I'm fairly confident WordPress still makes up sort of over 60% of any website that actually has a CMS still in the back end. That's a phenomenal number when you think of global websites, right? So it's here to stay, and I think that's probably not the question to be asking. It will be, well, when would it be? Is it right for my business? And, ultimately, what's it going to get replaced by?
Yeah. So why now does it keep cropping up in conversation? And what are the alternatives that people are putting forward? Yeah.
So listen, the argument often comes up, but right now it's AI driving that conversation, right? So AI is driving it because right now you can just produce a beautiful looking website. You can design a website in an AI bot and an AI tool, a HTML website, so a plain code website, and get that loaded. And in addition to that, the developer world, developers have a place in most website builds. The developer world is moving to cooler coding framework. So right now, most people want to be building in things like React, which is a much better code to write in than PHP, which is your boring old website code, right? And they have their place as well. Like there are much larger enterprise organizations that would want a website that works like that and works much faster. But ultimately, I think developers are probably pushing this a little bit because they don't want to be sitting working on a boring WordPress website. But yeah, again, comes back to the type of business you are and if it works or not.
Yeah. So there are situations where people need that level of complexity and the web dev's hands-on doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. So think bigger enterprise. I think probably one of my favourite examples is it's Virgin. I was about to say Vodafone. It's Virgin, the mobile company over in the UK. So Virgin Mobile, they acquired another company, and it pretty much took them, I think their numbers around like 48,000 subscribers and 40,000 individual pieces of content that needed to be updated. So you imagine these two major business acquisitions, all this content. So think right down from terms and conditions to multiple CRM systems to different websites with different platforms. You've got Drupal platform, you've got mobile apps, and things that change need to consecutively change, and you're rolling out terms and conditions that need to hit 17 different platforms on the same day, or you would be in breach of some of your terms and conditions, right? And so in those environments, if you can have a content engine where you're updating something and it can push out and just update on every platform that you use because you're big enough that you have a mobile app, or multiple mobile apps, you have multiple websites, you have content hubs displaying advertising in the middle of a supermarket, all of those things need to be the same. A £49 contract needs to be a £49 contract across, let's say 35, 38, 40 different platforms instantaneously. Yeah, shit, absolutely. But if you need to change Jenny's photo on the website because she resigned last Wednesday, slightly bloody different. So a nice way to think about it is, yes, a headless server is what it would be called. So headless servers can just be driven by HTML content updates, are a phenomenal solution. They're actually not that new. They've been around they've become a bit more mainstream, say, in the last 8 years, probably definitely over this sort of 5 to 6 years. But ultimately, what type of business that is. I have a pretty simple rule. If a company can afford to have an in-house developer, then you might be looking at having, HTML live updates, because you can afford someone sitting there to update your code for you. You think of Virgin's development team sitting behind the scenes. There's probably 20, 30, 40 developers just sitting in the marketing and the business response team to keep all of those platforms updated. It's the core platform they sell things on. Of course they can afford to do it, but most of us don't have a web developer. We do, and he prefers WordPress because he doesn't want to write in things like React.
Yeah. And the cost of, what's the cost comparison? Starting cost for Headless versus something like WordPress.
Yeah, listen, I'll get to cost, but I think there's also an important thing, which is you can just push like a one-page static HTML website live, which is slightly different, and I think those costs are different. So there's 3 scenarios here, which is a static HTML website pushed live, so no CMS in the back end, and that's where I think the small business argument more is coming in, and I'll talk to that in a second. But cost-wise, of like a headless server environment that you are dynamically updating content versus a WordPress environment, I think WordPress, depending on the complexity, probably $3,000 to $8,000 is the max you would want to be at, versus a headless scenario. You're talking it's fully code based, so you're probably starting at about 10,000 upwards, which would make sense more for an enterprise organisation.
Yeah, and if you think about what it costs to build a website with that complexity and then maintain over the year, I feel like is almost what the budget would be for a whole marketing function for a small to medium-sized business, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of...
Absolutely. So let's take away the enterprise solution because, we're for small business. So let's then move to the HTML option. So we've got some phenomenal examples here, and we're playing a lot with a really good style guide, really strong branding, great messaging. We're popping all of those things in and working with some custom Claude projects on some skills that we've built around design of websites.
Yep.
And they're beautiful. Like, they work really well. They all look a little bit the same, and we're conscious of that. But you know what? If you're a business and you're newish, or you're just trying to get a brand out there and you want to launch a website, they'll actually do the job, right? So we could take them and we could push them straight out to HTML, and you would have a website literally in an hour and a half. You could probably push out a website versus what is traditionally, a 35-hour plus project for us. And that includes a lot of complexities behind the scenes, all your search engine optimization, your go live, you're adding your analytics, your project management across that, getting your photos, putting them in, adding them in, content coming back and forth. But, that's a quick turnaround. And I can understand the appeal of that, but you're missing a lot when you do that. And that's probably more the argument of what it costs you long term versus a quick solution that just gets out to market straight away and seems seemingly very, very easy.
Yeah, easy in the short term.
Harder in the long term. Yeah. So I guess the piece comes down to what's that actually missing and why is that harder? I think every business can then have a look. The question we're asking is this headless, there's no back end to a website. So the web world has existed on a thing called a content management system. WordPress is a type of content management system. Drupal is, Wix is, Squarespace is, loads of things we're talking about. There's web forms now as well, like other ones. They're always coming up, and it's always this argument, is WordPress dead, right? So that's the CMS argument versus this sort of headless push the HTML live argument. What it comes down to is, if you need to make those quick changes and you don't want to have to wait for a developer, and I mean the changes that you want to be able to make, like my business hours are changing Jenny has been removed from the business and we've got to get her off the website.
I no longer want to do residential work.
I no want to turn off that page.
Yeah.
They're the pieces where you go, okay, can I just go to someone in my business, or even I as a business owner, or can I just go to, a team and have that change, and it can happen relatively quickly, like the same day, is what we're talking about, versus, you're actually waiting for a developer. And developers are phenomenal resources, but they're not generally known for getting back to you super quick. Like, that's not their thing. Our developers are managed by project managers, and the jobs they have to do are laid in front of them with SLAs and timeframes to get them completed. You know what I mean? So it's this piece of, are you waiting for a one-man band to update your website, and if he's on holiday, where's that going to be? So I think that piece of what do you actually need to change and how quickly would you need to change it matters. But the bigger argument for me is, a lot of people heard about this headless thing and WordPress is dead, ironically, at an AI conference or a workshop. And ironically, if you were just writing in straight HTML, you don't have any schema. On your website, you don't have any markup. So you're not sort of presenting an architecture of a website to the crawlers. Does that make sense?
Is this about when people just say they don't really care about SEO anymore and it's more about AI citations, and maybe they're not getting that from there?
Oh, yeah. So that is a big argument, right?
Yeah.
So the argument is, do we even need a website anymore? So that's one argument. But the other piece is just to look at your website and go, cool. Well, we actually know the data is that most people are still going to traditional Google searches. Now, we also know that it looks like AI is growing because Google is manipulating those results. Phenomenal piece in Koshi's Business Builders, written by Mel Strutt, if you want to read that. But on the fact that Google is making you use AI. So if you're doing a traditional Google search, you're using AI Overview, or you're essentially using Gemini, right? So it looks like everyone's going, but they're actually doing a traditional Google search.
Yeah.
And those Google searches, even though things like citations, so YouTube and Instagram pages, make up so much of the citations that are presented in an AI world, particularly in Gemini, but remembering that Google owns YouTube, so results there are a bit manipulated. Ultimately, the schema markup and how your website's presented on Google, and that means your meta titles and your meta descriptions, and to a degree, little alt tags and little ways that data is logically presented to be read by a crawler, they need to be had. So I did a little piece of work on the gentleman that presented that AI conference, and I just did his name, renowned global speaker apparently, and his business, versus me. And it literally couldn't pick up anything on him. There was just no structure to any of his data. His was a 1 hour quick fix HTML website that had been loaded up straight onto a domain name and was out there in the world. And so Google didn't actually have any core deep information about him. Whereas, citations are incredibly important, but your truth and what you own, that's your website. We've talked about owning your core asset, that someone can't just deactivate or deregister or change an algorithm tomorrow. Don't base your business on someone else's business. Your website still is that primary platform.
And how is schema used differently, able to be used differently in WordPress versus if you wanted to have that functionality in something that was just a HTML?
Well, listen, that's probably the core question of this, and it's actually the core question of WordPress versus all the other content management systems as well. WordPress is open source. There are legendary developers out there all just contributing great code to solve other people's problems, or plugins. So you hear, there's a plugin for that, or we can get a plugin over here. So let's just talk schema, let's just talk content structure. So I don't mean to get technical, but essentially a great way to explain is when you Google your business name and you come up, and you know how some things it's like got your business name and it'll have that's your meta title, and then it'll have a little overview of that.
Like your services.
Services, meet the team, and it's got it's nicely laid out. That's like the architecture and the structure.
Straight to the side place you want to go.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's like a HTML sitemaps presented, and we do that in a Google Search Console, but then we get to, with WordPress, plug in things like Yoast SEO or Rank Math, and they're specific SEO tools that are still just as important in the AI world from what we can see now as they were in the search world, right? And they're certainly not dead yet. I'm not saying they won't, but they're certainly not dead yet. And so you actually just plug something in. So as a company that builds websites, we can plug something in, but there's great in-house resources that can do this stuff as well. And it literally says, what is your meta title description? This many characters. What is your meta what's your meta title, what's your meta description. You get to dictate that. Otherwise, if you are just working with HTML, you're actually having to custom code, literally look at code and figure out where you're putting all of those meta titles and descriptions and all the schema markups of the logic of how you want that to be read and presented. So what you save in quickly getting a beautiful looking, perhaps, website live with no issues, beautiful. But in the long run, all these little things you're going to be missing. And I don't mean just those things. I mean things like adding Google Analytics to your web page. I mean things like, I want to add an FAQ answer, but I want it to be in an accordion style so you can press down and have a look. Like all of that having to be custom coded versus going, I'm using an Elementor theme on my WordPress website. There's an accordion button. I can add that. I can put it in as a page builder and I can figure out how to do that and you can roll through and get it done. And more importantly, you can change it. So if you think that WordPress is kind of like going to a really big supermarket and everything's available on a shelf that you could ever want to make your website work and you can just pick it up and go, versus, I want a loaf of bread. Fuck, I've got to buy the dough. I'm going to have to buy the egg. I'm going to have to buy this and I'm going to have to knead it and I'm going to have to put it together and I'm going to put it in the oven. And fuck, it didn't quite work. It literally is the difference of being able to pick something off a shelf or hand make something. And shit, you're going to be in a fair bit of trouble down the path. So maybe in the future we're going to be able to, as laymen, jump on and custom code just get Claude to produce code that we can plug in that'll do those quick plugins for us. But at the moment, if you want to make a change to a HTML website, you will literally having to go to a developer and reproduce and push the whole thing out again. And I mean the whole website out again. So in a world where we still need content updated, where we still need content continually, it's still king. Quality content is still king in terms of ranking and beating our competitors. It just doesn't make any sense that you're relying on a developer to do that for you and then changing the website every time you do it.
And then also people who, when you're not using a web dev and you're using a tool like Claude and doing it yourself. And I was smiling when you were saying that because obviously we're playing around with Claude a lot. The team.
You're playing. The team's
I'm playing,
using it correctly.
The team's using it really well. I get to just tag along and pretend I know what I'm doing. But
you're doing well actually, but that's okay.
But it is I feel like the more you play with something on Claude, the more just a small change can absolutely make massive errors, right, in what you're doing. Like
we're deeply invested in AI, right? And in certain aspects of the role, it's making phenomenal changes to the business. But I built you a proposal builder the other day, which for 3 weeks was absolutely phenomenal. And then Claude shit its pants and the project doesn't work and my skill needs updating again, right? So you've had to revert back until I've got the time to fix the skill for you, which is a little bit frustrating, but I accept that, and I recognise we're in this in-between zone of, it's not perfect, it's getting better every day. So I don't want to be a naysayer for it, but I would just come back to, from jumping on the bandwagon and this WordPress argument has just been around, and AI's just given it this fresh coat of paint to be talked about at the moment, and it's frustrating because for the small to medium businesses in Perth, you're wasting your time on something that isn't. It isn't. Is your website working? Yeah. If you were rebuilding a website right now, would you be looking at WordPress? Yeah. The design should be a bit cheaper, and things can change in how you get it into WordPress. There's definitely stuff changing at the front end, but ultimately, if you want to be able to make quick, sharp, small changes to your website, and you want it to be found, you're still going to be looking at having a content management system, and the best is still WordPress in our view, certainly in my view.
Yeah, the consistency of how you can look after a WordPress website and also the cost of maintaining it. It seems like something that I just think all small to medium business owners, a lot love, versus I know I have a lot of conversations early on about website rebuilds, and a lot of people haven't that experience where they've had a custom build, and then just every time there's a change, there's that massive expense, right? And it's WordPress just, it's so consistent, and
there's more WordPress or PHP developers than there are any others in the world. So when you advertise, you're going to find someone. Now, do the developers adore it? Not really. They probably would prefer to be building in the Reacts of the world and on headless servers, and a fair game to them. I think if you're the best in the business, you go and do that from a dev point of view. But Claude can also write that code now, right? So the reality is some would argue this whole WordPress is dead is developers trying to stay relevant. Shit, if we can keep having to update the HTML and the code and even writing in React code and keep pushing it forward to a headless environment versus we build it up front and we help you manipulate it into this WordPress thing, but you don't need us for another 3 to 4 years, really.
Yeah. All right. So, Mel, you love AI. We're all very aware of that, but why are we still building in WordPress?
Because there isn't a genuine alternative that's going to be better in the long term. I can push a static HTML website live tomorrow, but it isn't going to be a better outcome for me or the client. It's going to be more expensive to maintain, and I'm not 100% convinced of the security around it yet either. So that they're the big pieces. This isn't something that I'm afraid of because it's just popped up. I reckon any dev that's ever worked for us, Ryan, Jace, howdy, I reckon I ask them every quarter, is it still the right platform? We have those conversations. I remember hiring Kyle and, is it right? Are we missing something? Because at the moment I can't see an alternative, and I'm up looking at this, at least once a week and presenting the question forward. So first of all, I ask the question all the time.
Mm-hmm. What about the functionalities?
Oh, well, let me get to it. I'll use it like the probably 3 best examples. One is, why do we have a website? In most cases, lead capture, right? So we have a thing called a form fill on a website. Mm-hmm. Whether you're using Elementor form fills, whatever you plug in, which is basically, where you actually physically type name, surname, email, inquiry, this is what I want. Mm-hmm. Those form fills are the most important thing. What's the point of having it?
Great for sales and BD. You want those forms to work perfectly.
And I've, me, if I see an email address on a client website, I go spare, because we can't monitor that. We can't see when someone copies and pastes it. I think I've mentioned that in previous episodes. So the form plugin is so important. And in a WordPress environment, you actually save that form fill in the back end of the website. So if your email's not working or something doesn't come through, those form submissions save in the back end, right? Mm. But building out a form is something that literally in WordPress, this is how you put a form on a website. I want this button, inquire now, and I want this to be an Elementor form. Here's the plugin. I install it on a computer and it says, I want first name, I want last name, I want email address, I want phone number. It's done, right? Versus actually building one out in HTML and then having to test it and then making sure you've got a sending platform in the back end. It's all built into a WordPress environment. That stuff's hours of code. And you can write it faster, but then you've got to figure out how it plugs in and figure out if it works and figure out when you're testing it, does it save somewhere? It just disappears. Fuck, just use the easy one that's right in front of you until there's a much better option. There isn't one at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And there's other CMSs coming through, but all of them, they're great. Shopify has its place. Others have their place, but it's built on the same idea. You're picking things out and putting them into your website that exist. That's a great thing. My other argument that's super easy is the one I've touched on, but it's ready built for SEO. You literally pick up one of those tools that I mentioned, Rank Math or Yoast SEO, and you install it, and you can write your actual structure for your content just by writing it in there. You're not having someone develop. So it's readable suddenly in AI. It's readable to Google. It's presented properly, and that's all been built for you because some cool people sit down and continue to contribute to this code community, which you just get to use. Unlike even other CMSs where, I'd like to have that feature. Yeah, cool, that's an extra $17.95 a month. It's incredibly frustrating. Not the case with WordPress, and we forget that very often. So, Mon, it's not just those. This bag goes much deeper. So you're looking at the security of a website, you're looking at form fields, you're looking at SEO, you're looking at features you might want to add, like the accordion style or a Google map, all of those things that you can just pick out and put onto a website. Much, much better. Definitely not having to bake the bread from the beginning, if you get my drift.
Yep. And, just for people who may not have a website on WordPress, but it's in a different CMS, is there much variation in, say, Squarespace? I think you've mentioned Wix and...
web forms now. There's a few. Different horses for different courses. I'm not a fan of Drupal because I just see people get stuck with that and never able to edit it. Squarespace and Wix are a beautiful startup option. If you can literally build, I would have complete faith that you could build a Squarespace website, and It's hosted within its own environment. If we want to start that window cleaning business tomorrow, I'll get you to set up M&Ms. So they have their place. I'm an advocate of Wix and I'm an advocate of Squarespace. They don't pretend to be something they're not. When you start getting more serious about the size of your business, how much content you want to put together, if you want to be a bit specific about a design so it doesn't look so much like a blocky website, then WordPress is a nice option. You can put pretty much any design across a WordPress website. And again, it's that feature-rich element. So if you're on a Squarespace website, if you don't pay your Squarespace bill, your website goes down and you haven't got that website. Whereas if you, with 3x2, you built your WordPress website and and we're hosting it for you, you own the website files. So you own all the infrastructure. If you want to move to someone else, if you want to try hosting internally, wouldn't recommend it. It's yours. The files belong to you. So it's not a subscription you have to keep paying. You pay for hosting and you're paying that with somebody else, but you don't lose all that information if you don't pay your bill once. So Wix, Squarespace, Webform, very similar in that way. They take the whole thing and get it done for you. But again, in that WordPress world, there's millions of people that can do it. There's millions of people that can host it. And you're not bound to anything. And there's a freedom in that as a business owner, I think, that people should appreciate.
Yep. So good for lead tracking, good for SEO in terms of WordPress and how we use it. What about, and the other thing that people obviously really need their website for is to come up in search.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's the SEO component of it. But you're not going to have any different...
in terms
AI
search.
AI search.
Sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Generative engine optimization. I think that's what we're still using. I'm not sure now. So primarily, I think like 73% of searches are from citations. So again, like that YouTube, social media, all the third party. So citations are like not your sites, the third party place you mentioned. Even
Reddit.
Like Reddit, True, even like Yellow Pages and like the True Blue, indexes and stuff. All of those things were relevant. So citations are probably bigger in an AI world, but like how many times do you look for something in AI and then go back and Google it to find the actual website to see that it exists? Like we're talking every time.
Yeah.
Even on
That's
Instagram.
the trust point.
Yeah,
like you need to
absolutely. It's your credibility piece. You're going back and looking on there. But
did the business actually exist, or did someone just mention something weird on Reddit?
Yeah, and they're there, and also like have I found the right one and who's behind it? So I think to show up. So we're looking at two things. You're going to get sort of cited or mentioned. In an AI search, right? Cited, no one's ever going to see. It's sort of just like it's where it gets its information from. Mention's a great place to be. You definitely want to be mentioned in AI. But most of those mentions, they are drawing on sources that you produce, and they will go back and check the relevance. I guess the credibility, it will turn back to a website, particularly if someone starts to dig into answers, questions. So like it's those secondary or the compound questions after the initial query, where you'd want your website to have a place. But more importantly, it's ownership. Like I said, anything you can't control, cool. We've got a YouTube channel. It's got Raising the Bar on it. It's awesome. We've got 3 leads through Raising the Bar, right? We never expected any because we're pretty shit and we acknowledge that, right?
100%. But say it out loud all the time.
Pretty shit. But the reality is I don't pay for YouTube. Advertising pays for YouTube. So if one day, if Google ever saw it to, shut down YouTube, I don't have any bloody control of that. I've just got the videos Joel sent me before I loaded them up to YouTube somewhere sitting on our Google Drive, right? So ownership matters to me. And I think we've got to look to the place we have control, and that's our website. And it remains that. And I might be wrong in 5 years, might be wrong in 2. But at the moment, it's still that.
So then how would a business owner, small to medium business owner, know whether their website's working for them or against them right now?
Yeah. I think, is it annoying the crap out of you? So most people come...
Sorry, that's just...
so
many people are so annoyed by their website.
Yeah. So generally, actually what you see from a small business owner is that you've let things get quite out of date, and you probably could have changed them, but you let them get out of date. So when we go and see people, it's like, they're not even the services we do, and you got more, and that dude hasn't worked here for 4 years, and
it's not expanded to 3 other states.
We've expanded to 3. We had an acquisition that we didn't really mention and we didn't get done. So most people are looking to refresh and get things done.
Yeah.
But I think, is your website working for you is can you update it with the things you need to update? So the Jenny resigning example, like honestly, changing people on a website is something people are really passionate about. It's okay, I don't have people's pictures on my website. Well, how often do you need to upload content? Because you should be doing that if you want to be found. And how often do you want to, maybe change a question on your contact us form because you're trying to make sure that your leads come through with a little bit more credibility. You're maybe making people select an option before they move to the next point. Well, that's really easy on a WordPress or a CMS-based site. But the reality is I think I would say all small to medium businesses need to be on some form of CMS or content management system. The size of their business and the flexibility they need in a website would depend on whether they would use something like a Squarespace, a Wix, a web form, or a WordPress. And then you've got to look into you want to be as the business owner on there maintaining it, or do you actually just want someone like a 3x2 or a marketing admin in your company who can just jump on and make those updates and make them pretty easily. So I'd say 100% if you're a business owner and you want to make those quick changes, you want control, you want a CMS. Otherwise, if you are massive and you need to make massive content changes across platforms, then you might look at a headless server and HTML, straight code option, headless option.
One of the things I actually like about our proposals when we have a website and I go through kind of the line items is that, in the final stage when we're going live is actually like sit down training with the team, the client, on how to actually use the website, make those update changes, right? Like that's part of the build.
Yeah.
And I think that just seems so reasonable, and it's one of the things that people go, oh wow,
really nice.
like that's nice.
Yeah.
And you're like, of course, you got to train, and that's not saying that they have to do it. We might be managing that.
And the irony is most of our hosting includes an hour of support, and they just email us through and we make the changes anyway. But I think it's that
they own it. They feel like they could if they needed to.
They do bloody own it. And I think that's the most important thing. Like this whole idea of essentially you push a HTML website forward, unless you're an expert in GitHub and knowing everything that you'd need to push for different versions moving through, and you can set up a domain name and make it happen for yourself. This is actually a bit of a bullshit argument because it's actually quite difficult. Absolutely, you can produce something that looks just like a website in HTML super quickly and super easily, and you could probably be really proud of it. Get that live and functioning for you, because deployment is the harder part in HTML, yet that's the easier part in WordPress. And it's easier in WordPress because we've done all the hard work to go, if you want to change just this banner here, or you want to change the font here, we did the hard work when building it so you can come back and make that change. But if you do that in HTML, no, you've got to change the whole thing to get it done. And I just think the ongoing cost of that for a small business owner, like, okay, so we have people who have let their websites get outdated. What's the most common thing? I'm being held ransom by my web developer.
Oh, I had it today.
Yeah.
Literally had a client call up. We're halfway through a website build, and because their old site, wasn't necessarily built well or maintained, it's been hacked, and it's a couple of $1,000s to fix it. But there's no point spending that, right? Because
they're halfway through a website build.
But they're sitting there and that's their website, right? So the whole weekend it was coming up showing, Mel.
Phenomenal example, because that's when you could blow that website away, put up a quick HTML static page. So, hey, no worries, you're halfway through a website build. We're going to put this static page up for you. It's going to look pretty. It's going to have nothing in the back end. But as soon as we can, we'll get that website live.
That was the solution.
Was it? I wasn't even involved in that.
Oh, well, we're doing we're doing the one pager. Just because it's only a week and a half basically till we go live.
Yeah, and a really good if a week and a half to live is that's fantastic because hopefully Google doesn't index it. The risk with that as a solution is that in that one page static site, you don't have all the things we've talked about. So, your pages disappear, you haven't got the 301 redirects, all that content disappears if the website is indexed. That's got to be an issue. But if you're a couple of weeks away from going live, doesn't matter by the time, and then we push it to be crawled straight away. We make sure those 301 redirects in from the old linking pages, and that is a beautiful, beautiful answer. So that's where the benefit of a HTML site, but to be fair, that was piss easy before AI, so I still won't even take that as an argument. I think... can't even remember what the bloody question was now, Mon, but I think ultimately, if you are needing that level of control and you want to make those quick updates and your website's not causing you a whole lot of pain, you're probably in a good place. If you're really frustrated having to go to a developer to make the smallest updates, A really good thing is to have a WordPress website. I let clients dictate to us and I say, listen, I can build it like this and you can probably change 95% of it without never needing to phone us. But if you want this, that, this, and this here, you're probably only going to have about 70% control. You're not going to be able to change this or this because that's custom coded in there. They can choose what they want. And I like that freedom of WordPress.
Yeah, not many people choose the custom side, right? They just want something simple. They want something cost effective. They actually, I think they do. People now they do want to optimize for marketing.
Yeah,
they just want,
it's a performance vehicle, not an ego play, right? Yeah. And you should be building it to do what it is you need it to do. People will find you. They will come to your site. They will read a little bit. They will make an inquiry. And does that seamlessly work? Understand your customer journey, then you'll know how your website works. But does your form fill work, and does it send you an email to actually say you've got an inquiry? Very important. And sometimes you're too busy with the other stuff for that bit not to work. That's frustrating.
Yeah. So what are the key things that a business owner needs to know in 2026 about websites? Round it off.
I think for all the noise that's out there, I would say, is your website an IT asset or a business asset? Mm-hmm. And if it's a business asset, then get rid of all the noise. Does it do what you need it to do? Does it demonstrate credibility? Does it attract people if you need it to bring people in through search engine optimization or generative engine optimization? Mm-hmm. And can they read about you and can it convert? That's all you need. I don't give a shit what CMS it's on, but if you can have those simple things, then all this talk of everyone's trying to get a bargain, you don't need a bargain, you need something that actually fucking works. And the way it's going to work is probably going to be a CMS option. And again, don't care which one it is, but don't jump on the hype when the solution's not completely rigorous yet. And when it is rigorous, I'll be talking about it because it'll make my clients' lives better. But right now, it wouldn't make it better.
Sounds good.
Beautiful. You happy?
Happy as a clam.
Let's go and do some work.